Welcome to the Investing Podcast presented by Tusk Media. This is Outsider Trading, an audio and video deep dive into the people, places, and things that we find most interesting in the market.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Investing Podcast. We're switching it up big time today. We're having 2 episodes in a single day.
I'm excited about this one because we really get to dive deep into a single company.
Yeah, and not only are we doing 2 episodes, but we're also focusing on just one stock today. I think it's the first time we've done either of these things.
Right.
So, and the stock is Apple. They're coming out with earnings tomorrow.
Yeah, tomorrow after the close.
After the close.
Usually they report pretty quickly. I think that we're within half an hour of the close. So keep an eye out for their press release. They'll come out with their earnings results and they'll give you some guidance figures, and then they'll have a conference call about half an hour after that. So
everybody's going to be staying at work late tomorrow.
Yeah, everyone's going to want to listen to Tim Cook and what they have to say and how beautiful their products are and how great the iPhone 7 is selling.
How it'll change your life forever.
Right. So you want to just dive right into it?
Yeah, let's hit it.
So we want to give you guys a quick preview of the earnings results so you know what to look for and know how to define a good quarter versus a bad quarter, because a lot of times it goes more than just the EPS number, which is the earnings per share number. There's things that you need to look at that project that you can figure out what's going to happen in the future, and there's things that you can figure out when things might seem pretty good on the surface, but underneath the water it's a little choppier. It's kind of got that rip current going.
Yeah.
So first of all, let's just look at the iPhone, because when you're talking about Apple, you're talking about the iPhone.
Of course.
iPhone is 65% of Apple sales on a trailing 12 months basis, and that's been increasing quite a bit since the iPhone's got increasing market share,
right,
and has been really become the company almost, more than just the old Mac business. A lot of people think that Apple is really this ecosystem, but it's really almost just a one product company at the moment. So if we're looking at the iPhone numbers, a lot of times we have to look at this quarter's expectations and what the street is saying. So right now, according to Merrill Lynch, they're saying that the street expectation is for iPhone sales to be up 11% on a quarter-over-quarter basis. That makes a lot of sense because June quarter was kind of the lull quarter, and the September quarter comes out with the launch. Were you excited about the new iPhone 7?
Absolutely not.
Really? Why not? It's just kind of more of the same?
It's funny. My iPhone 5 broke last week. Yeah. And I went out and got a new phone almost immediately, and I got a SE. I believe it was like right after the 6. I think I had an upgrade to get a 7, or maybe it was like a little bit of money on top of the upgrade.
You just wanted something a little lower price point.
Lower price point, it works perfect.
Quick question: did you get the one with the higher memory or the lower memory?
I believe I got the one with the lower memory. I think it's 16 gigs.
Because when I've been thinking about getting a new phone myself, but not because I'm really thrilled with the new features of the phone,
right,
but rather because I just need the memory. I'm still on the 16 gig, and I'm having real issues just downloading
having
new
to
software.
Find which specific picture to delete.
Right, exactly. You scrolling back years, and it's like, I can't delete that. So the tribulations of a lot of pictures, I guess.
I will say with this new SE phone, the speed on it versus the 5C, just like the apps opening or even this might sound dumb, but like the internet, I feel like is faster on it. Like the whole processing
and that makes sense.
Completely faster. It's really nice.
You look at some of those slides that Apple puts up when they introduce a new phone, and they're always just showing hockey stick-like improvement on that convex curve about actually the performance enhancements that they have. Quite frankly, I'm almost at the point where performance enhancements are almost, it's good. And I think if you were upgrading from the 5C to something newer, I think I'd notice it more. But right now, it's fast enough.
Yeah,
the phone at the screen is good enough. I just need the memory there.
Right.
So, expectation is for it to be up 11% quarter over quarter, down 6% on a year-over-year basis. The down 6% is actually better than last quarter, which was down 15%. So that is telling us that the street is expecting us to see this iPhone kind of a glide path on iPhone sales, so that they'll level out here almost on about a 200 million unit annualized basis, and we have a chart on that actually.
Let me ask you a question. If most analysts are expecting that negative, you said it was year-over-year growth would
Right.
be negative, and that should be reflected in the stock price. But do you think if they come out after market tomorrow and show close to those numbers, that it affects the stock price, even though it was expected?
It's a good question, because I would have said, a month or 2 months ago, especially when Apple was under $100 a share, I would have thought, that would be a beneficial result for them, just to show that things are not falling off a cliff. Now with Apple at $117 a share, the question becomes a lot more difficult, because people really, this baseline of, you can see it on the chart, people expect that the iPhone 7 is really going to show some flat improvement and beginning to level off around this 200 or a little more than 200 million unit a year level. If that starts to fall and goes back down into the hundreds, like 190, 180, and again, this is on a trailing 12-month basis, so it might take a little while for the data to get reflected, but you can forecast those with your own models. If they start to go into the 190s, 180s, then you have to start to worry about, what is the actual long-term earnings potential for this business.
Especially with it being such a huge chunk of revenue.
Exactly, and we have a chart up here that shows the revenue of the iPhone relative to the revenue of the services business. Because people are talking about, iPhone sales may decline, but with Apple Pay and with the iTunes stores and selling apps and selling games and selling subscription service to Apple Music, they have all these things, these new businesses, if you will, that should be boosting the top line. Problem with that is, a $5 billion business for Apple is not a $5 billion business for most companies. $5 billion for Apple is just a fraction. It's not a needle mover when you're selling 200 million units of a product that costs $600 a unit.
Right. And as you see on that chart, you can just tell how relatively small the services is. Even though it's growing, it looks like a flat line, basically.
Indeed. The pricing on the iPhone is also something that needs to be watched. The expectation is for it to be $615 a unit, and Apple discloses this in their press release. And we have a chart here of historical average iPhone prices per quarter. And you can see when the Apple iPhone 6 was launched back in September 2014, you really see this big jump up in pricing.
Right.
And I think the big reason for that is also the Plus. The iPhone 6 Plus came out, which was $100 more, and also they were really ramping up the memory argument.
Right.
So
did that come because of higher price points or because of lower cost of goods for Apple to produce it?
They ramped up. The gross margin did not improve substantially beyond what you would expect from just a higher mix of iPhone units. iPhones are the highest margin product that Apple produces on a highest margin big time product.
Yeah.
It's accretive to the margin. And obviously accretive to the bottom line.
Right.
So that's a really good point actually, because when you're talking about iPhones, not only do you have to worry about the units and the revenue, but the thing is, if the revenue misses, then that's have a increasingly negative impact on overall earnings.
Right.
Because not only is it 65% of revenue, it's an even higher percentage of your gross margin line. So keep an eye out on that. And the last thing that we have here is a chart on Apple revenue by region. So if services aren't really taking up much of the slack in iPhone units, then maybe geography will.
Yeah.
So by that I mean, if we have mature growth in the United States, if we have mature growth in Europe, And if we have mature growth in Japan, well, maybe China and India and some of these other, emerging markets will be able to take up some of the slack. The problem with that is last year we had tremendous growth in China, even though everyone was saying China was falling apart.
Right.
If you cast your mind back, Tim Cook actually came out prior to the September quarter, emailed Jim Cramer, who's on CNBC.
Mad Money.
Yeah, he didn't email us, which I kind of,
sure did.
we just kind of, we're a pretty big media outfit too.
We're working on setting that relationship.
So he didn't email us, so we feel a little bit jaded by that. Nevertheless, he said that at that point, China was doing phenomenally well. He looked at the reports every day out of China and said, no, there's just no sign of the weakness that everyone was talking about. Well, there's weakness now.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the chart, the Americas fell into decline, Europe fell into decline at the end of last year. Americas and Japan fell into decline at the end of last year. Europe fell into decline at the beginning of this year, along with China. And China's just got increasingly negative.
Yeah.
So that's not a good sign for them.
Yeah.
So watch the China revenue. They were down almost about 30% last quarter. If they can stabilize that a bit, if they can be down but not down by a ton, and I'll let you be the judge of how you define a ton. We have our internal kind of metrics and how we view the quarter holistically.
Right.
But that would be a good sign if China could stabilize for them. So keep an eye out on that. The other things that we have to talk about are two things. We have to talk about the effect of Samsung. So Samsung, with its exploding phones, how is that going to affect demand for the iPhone?
I can't imagine it would affect it in a negative way.
Right. So you'd think that Tim Cook and the Apple executives on the conference call will probably talk about that. You probably won't see much of it in the conference call.
Right.
In the earnings release. But in the conference call, you should see some commentary on that. I'm guessing that you won't see numbers. The numbers you will see, though, and keep an eye out for this, is what Apple's been announcing more and more frequently, is the percentage of people switching from Android to iOS in the quarter. And I would expect that you see that number rise relative to what we've seen recently. The last thing that I wanted to hit on was new products, because if we're not seeing growth from services, not needle-moving growth from services, geography, what new products do they have? They just released a new edition of the Apple Watch, the IDC saying that is not selling very well.
I honestly didn't really expect it to, because the Apple Watch, the first one, it didn't do much. So.
Right. I am almost at that point where I'm just waiting for this watch to actually become a mature business before I'm actually really getting excited about it.
Right.
Because right now, if they keep producing these stepwise improvements, I'm just going to wait. It's not a must-have product.
Right.
So I'll just wait until it becomes more mature, and it works better, quite frankly. And then I might be tempted to step up.
Same kind of viewpoint with the iPhone 7.
Right.
If I were to get an Apple Watch, I might just get the one, even though it has slightly fewer capabilities that just aren't necessary.
Right.
That aren't the difference between me buying the two and the one. So.
Indeed. And then they have the Apple Car, which has been long rumored. But again, when you're selling 200 million iPhones at $600, $700 a pop, you're just not going to be able to move the needle a great deal with a car, and especially if you're not producing the entire car.
Mm-hmm.
GM and Ford are like $40-50 billion enterprise value companies, market cap companies. And so when you look at them and you say, well, Apple is multiples of that valuation, how is Apple going to be able to actually take share and actually have the car be a meaningful part of the business? Right. So that's a big question mark there. So let's hit the estimates really quick. So iPhones are estimated to be 45 million. in the current quarter. So 45 million units is the street estimate according to Merrill Lynch for the current quarter.
And I'm assuming that what was the pre-adjustment number before Samsung, or is there one?
You just see these numbers evolve over time.
So just little by little, day by day.
Yeah. Okay. So if you look back at some of the headlines, and you'll be able to see how the analyst estimates evolve over time. So 45 million units, about $615 a pop, is what Merrill Lynch is saying. iPads, 9 million units at $451 a pop. Macs, 5.3 million units at $1,178 each. And Merrill Lynch also breaks out Apple Watch number. I don't expect that to be released in the conference call or in the earnings release. Apple's been pretty coy about talking about how many watches they actually sell. For what it's worth, Merrill Lynch thinks they're going to do 2 million units. And then overall, revenue is expected to be 47 million by the street. Sorry, 47 billion.
That was
a good catch.
47 million.
That's a good catch. Yeah, 47 billion. Yeah, that would not be good. The guidance is 45.5 to 47.5 billion, which makes sense. Right. Apple generally reports at least in the high end of its guidance range, usually above. Gross margin is expected to be 37.5% to 38%.
Pretty on par with what they've been.
It's pretty on par, but it's also relatively weak for a new release quarter. Right. You should see that margin increase as they, just practice. As you practice making iPhones, it sounds really simple, but as you build that specialization, you build that experience, you build efficiencies, and you improve that gross margin. So in December quarter, I would expect that gross margin to rise. But for this quarter, it's expected to be 37.5 to 38%. EPS estimate is $1.64 for the current quarter. So keep an eye on all that. Next quarter, they'll also release guidance for next quarter in the press release, and that expectation is $74.7 billion, not million.
Yeah.
So 47 billion for this quarter, 74.7 billion for next quarter.
I'm assuming Christmas ties in a lot. So it's such a big difference.
Well, you also have a full quarter of the new product.
Okay.
So you'll have some shipments, but because the iPhone 7 was only launched the last couple quarters, it was
right about
Q3,
halfway through Q3.
It was out far beyond halfway.
Oh, it was. Then.
Yeah, it was 2 weeks before the end of the quarter.
Oh, okay. Wow.
So 2 out of 12.
Yeah.
Obviously, next quarter we get 12 out of 12. So keep an eye on that. We'll also put these estimates in the post on Seeking Alpha. Full disclosure, we are long shares of Apple. So we'll obviously be watching it very closely.
Very close. Yeah.
As always, hit us up on Twitter. Let us know if you have any questions on it. In addition, we'll be doing previews like this throughout the week. So if you have a stock that you really want us to give you a quick preview on, we can do that. We're at Tusk Media LLC on Twitter. We'll see you next time.
Tusk Media is a subsidiary of Narwhal Capital Management. Ratings and reviews of Tusk Media content are not to be construed as endorsements of opinions, analysis, or services offered by Tusk or its parent company. The opinions and predictions shared here are professional beliefs at the time of publication. We are not under duress from any of the corporate entities mentioned. This is not a solicitation to take any particular action. Although we are investment advisors, this information should not be considered investment, legal, or tax advice. We strive to be as impartial, insightful, and accurate as possible. We base our opinions, analysis, and calculations on information we believe to be reliable, but we cannot guarantee its accuracy. We can, however, guarantee that our opinions will sometimes be flat out wrong due to a variety of factors. Employees and clients of Narwhal Capital Management may or may not hold positions in the securities detailed and may or may not hold these positions in the future. A full list of all securities purchased, sold, or held during the 12 months preceding the date of this publication can be provided upon request. Unless otherwise noted, all data accessed via MarketWatch or the Bloomberg terminal. Past performance does not guarantee future results. A copy of Narwhal's Form ADV is available at the SEC's website, www.advisorinfo.sec.gov, or from Narwhal upon written request.